Hey everyone, welcome to today's AMA info session. This is a bit of a last minute change from the plan, but happy to at least give you guys some guidance where I can. I kind of was describing it. On with me is Dean Claire O'Keefe from Ave Maria School of Law. We were kind of describing this as kind of an open webinar where I'm going to give some main guidance. She's going to introduce herself, and I'm happy to talk about anything Lsat Wizard related, what the program's going to be, anything broad strokes of strategy for preparing for a test or reviewing things. So we'll get into some detail that'll definitely help you guys. But this will not actually cover. So I ask again, if you're going to ask a question, it cannot be about a certain prep test. If you ask me prep test 45, I can't answer anything about a prep test. So with that guideline, I'm going to first let Dean O'Keefe take over and have her introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. Great to have you here with us this afternoon. Again, we're sorry for the hiccup, the last minute hiccup, but we're just going to roll with it as best we can. So I am the Dean of Admissions here at Ave Maria School of Law, and we've been partnering with Brandon for a number of years, and we've had a great relationship, and he does great work with the Lsat. Originally, when we had him over here just for a quick open house for about a half an hour, and just in listening to him in that half hour, I realized I could have scored extra points on logic games, which was my absolute nemesis. And so that began the relationship. And so, we are happy and honored and pleased to be able to sponsor this. You are going to get some great information from him, and I think that you're really going to enjoy the course when we get rolling. Brandon really has a way of breaking it down into, manageable pieces that I think are really understandable. And so, we're thrilled to have you here. I'll be on again next week. As I said, I'm the Dean of Admissions. You're going to be getting emails and information from me and my office. And if you have any questions anywhere along the way about the admissions process, and we can help you in any way, I'm happy to do so. So, even if it's not necessarily that you're going to end up at my school, I understand the process can be daunting, and we're here to help you in any, possible way that we can. And we just are keeping our fingers crossed that COVID reverses course and that by next year we'll be live and in person, which is, I think that's going to be everybody's New Year's wish this year for sure. So anyway, welcome. Sorry about the last minute change, but hang in there and we will deliver to you the program that we've promised. So great to see you.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Thanks.
So first thing I do want to do is I just kind of remind everyone of Ave Maria's role in this. We started doing programs together about 6 years ago. They approached me about wanting to offer low cost, high quality LSAT instruction to really their local community that they felt it was lacking in general, but we were doing it in person. And they reached out to me to teach a class that was few $100s. I think it was 200, 300, something like that. To
$199.
Relative to even my personal business was a very, very, very low cost. And so they've always kind of strived to offer that. We started doing multiple sessions a year. So basically at the start of pandemic, we were looking for ways to do the same type of program, but me personally wanting to take it to the next level of offering free help and really taking advantage of my skill set and helping those struggling with the various issues, especially the economic issues that have been the windfall from COVID. We decided to offer a free program. We met with LSAC. We did it what we thought was the right way. It was up live. I know a lot of you emailed me that you did participate in that games course and found it extremely helpful. Since then, Ave Maria has sponsored basically. I realized I didn't say their sponsorship allowed for not just the Zoom webinars, which are not cheap that we're on here, but also just the funds that ended up being huge donations towards our GoFundMe, which is still up and over $10,000. They've sponsored me building a website that's gone towards building a website. marketing licenses for LSAC and other things to be able to offer this next phase. I see more people joining and asking questions. So once again, today is going to be an AMA related to LSAT questions. I'm going to start with some basics of what I think general structure is going to be of today, of like studying. And then I'm going to open it up to you guys just answering any questions. But I do see that a lot of people are popping up in the chat, and it's kind of, I'm a little bit sidetracked from it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have everybody raise their hand if they want to ask a question, and I'm going to close that chat box. It's just hard for me to kind of monitor both. But yeah, so I'm really thankful to for putting together the efforts towards this and standing by me as we've tried to figure out these next steps and being super amenable in making anything happen that I've needed to make this work. And none of it would have been possible without them. So I hope you all can recognize and thank them for their efforts here. So Dean O'Keefe, you're not going to stay. Are you going to stay on, or
I'm
are you
not.
good?
I mean, do you want me to just do these first 3 questions in the chat for you to read them to you, or do you want to?
I mean, I can pull them up. I see them, and I'm going to address them. So you're
Okay.
good. You don't have to.
Yep. No, I have the LSAC form at 3, so I'm going to ditch off, but I will be on again next
Perfect.
week so that I can say hello to everybody else that will be joining us at that point. So
Perfect.
thanks, Brandon. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you.
And
You
I
too.
look forward
And
to seeing everyone next week.
Yep, we'll
Take
see you
care.
next week. Perfect. All right, so I'm going to answer just the first 3 questions that I see on the chat because I didn't say that before. And then after that, I'm going to open it up to bigger questions. So first question was somebody saying they're curious to see if there's any material we would recommend to get started before the session starts. So I'm actually going to address this in a much bigger way. So I'm going to bring up the way that I see starting LSAT, the way that I have a conversation with everybody that calls me, whether no matter how much work you've done. I see the LSAT as a completely different test than anything any of you have ever studied for before. And I see it as mainly different because it is a test of skills rather than a test of knowledge. So tests of knowledge are going to be where you try to memorize information and then on test day, find the right time to spit it back out and show you know it and go, aha, I know what they're talking about, and spit it out. And that's how most of our undergrad tests are. That's how a lot of law school tests are. Most law school tests are. In fact, that's going to be pretty much what the bar is you have to memorize 21 subjects worth of material and just find the right time to spit it back out of that memorization. The LSAT is not a test of memorization. The LSAT is a test of skills. I almost analogize it, 2 main analogies that I use. I analogize it to learning a new musical instrument or learning a very skill-specific sport, let's say like golf. So whichever analogy you want to think of that makes more sense to you. Now, if you are trying to learn a musical instrument, let's say you're trying to learn guitar. If I just stuck a guitar in your hands and said, go practice guitar, anyone could kind of strum on it, but they're going to have no guidance in terms of what to even practice. So without any sort of guidance whatsoever, your practicing guitar is not going to make you much better at guitar. But there is going to be, as I see it, 2 phases to improving the skill. And so the first phase is learning what the actual techniques and strategies are in a guitar, what the notes are, what the chords are, and the notes of certain songs you want to play. And so there is an element of knowledge, but in the grand scheme of your skill set, the knowledge side is very small relative to the skill building, which comes after. For example, I tried learning guitar and I watched a bunch of YouTube videos and I tried getting it and I got some things down. But the reality is, even if I have that song in my head, if I'm not going practicing and self-analyzing and thinking about what I'm doing or recording myself and trying to hear it to see whether it sounds right, without that self-analysis, I'm not going to get much better. I could have it totally perfect in my head, but that does not mean that you're actually going to be good at guitar. And so very similar with LSAT. LSAT's going to have this first phase of your preparation, which is learning question types, learning strategies. What are the actual approaches and concepts that they're testing on the test? And that is a great first step, but it's a small step relative to the actual test day performance. For test day performance, we need to keep practicing those strategies and learning to execute them. And just like guitar, some of us are going to pick it up a lot faster than others. Some people pick it up right away, and some people it takes a lot of time and practice to be able to do it. Very similar to guitar, it's going to take a lot of repetition. So for me, when you're studying, especially as you're getting into that second phase, which is the practice and getting better at executing the stuff you already know, but just improvement, think about it like if you're trying to learn guitar. I always kind of put two hypothetical students next to each other. If I have a student that studies, says, Brandon, I'm really busy, but I am getting my hour in a day, 5-6 days a week, sometimes 2 hours, hour to 2 hours, 5-6 days a week. And I put that in contrast with another student that does nothing Monday to Saturday and is like, I'm so busy Monday to Saturday, I can't do anything. But don't worry, on Sunday, I'm doing 10 hours of work. The reality is that second student is not going to get the same improvement as that first student, even though the first student's doing half or much less work in total. So you want to think about it of repetition of work is going to be key. Just like musical instrument, it becomes a bit of muscle memory. So you have to take the knowledge, which is that first phase, and transition it into that execution, which is that second phase. And the second phase, as I said, could go from short to long. And in reality, it goes on forever. Just like a musical instrument, you can get better every time you practice. You can get a little better. And I apologize. I realize I'm ADD right now. I took off my background because that virtual background was not working for me. So pardon my disastrous office here, but I'm just going to take it off for today. So with the actual second phase, I realized I didn't even introduce myself. Maybe I should have started with that. I definitely will start with that next week as we get going. I'm Brandon Cohen, started Lsat Wizard. I've been doing Lsat for 12 years. In 2008, I actually scored a 180. I personally started at a 153 on my cold diagnostic. I studied about 9 months. I did a lot of different things. I started with a prep course, ended up studying a lot of different books that I could get my hands on. I actually started reading some logic and philosophy of logic, and I did a lot of self-prep. And in the end, I ended up getting a 180 12 years ago on the October 2008 exam. And the reality is I got a perfect score 12 years ago. I am so much better than I was then. In fact, I'm so much better every single year that I do that. And that's me continuing to work on that second phase. So my point to that aspect is that you can forever get better. The more you practice, the better. So when people ask me the question of how long does it take to prepare for the LSAT, I can give an answer for that first phase. I can tell you what the typical time frame it is to understand what the test is about, what the strategies are, what the concepts are, what the question type approaches are, et cetera, and what a typical amount of work is for that first phase. But the second phase, you need to give yourself as much time as possible given the parameters of logistics of life. Like, when's the next LSAT? When is the next LSAT that works for your application cycle? And right now we're in a little bit of a weird time for a lot of people because rolling admissions have already started. You want to get your application in as soon as possible. And so I know a lot of people are signed up for that January test, that next test, but I'm going to tell you, if you haven't even started studying, the odds that you're going to be your best are basically none. You will be better if you keep studying more. The question is, can we hit our goals appropriate for the schools that we need to get to? So that's kind of just a different way of framing it that I kind of come into. When you see the different courses in the industry, there are some courses that are like, 100 hours or 20 hours, or there's one that's like 900 hours and you should study for your rest of your life for the LSAT. It's like, I realize that's not practical in actual execution. So I try to find a good balance. So getting into that, what my games course was and what the upcoming logical reasoning and reading comprehension course is going to be, will be a comprehensive first phase. And it is already a comprehensive first phase. What it will be is going to be some, what I hope will forever be able to stay up as free lesson plans. So the live lessons, if you can't make it or if you ever want to watch it again, I'll be able to post those on YouTube and have them free on my website. I still have to figure out exactly how that works. But what's going to happen is the homework that I'm going to do to supplement that, to start with that second phase of drilling it and repetition and execution, that is going to have to be behind the licensing paywalls, which I am offering at the extremely low cost. And so Everything will be, if you wanted to access my games course or the logical reasoning extra homeworks and any other supplementals. And really my goal is through the rest of the year 2021 and forever to keep adding new material behind that paywall to justify even charging you guys for it. But the idea is it's all going to be on a website, lsatwizard.com. If you go to lsatwizard.com today, it's December 12th. It's going to have a coming soon page, but it should be up within the week before we actually launch. So lsatwizard.com will be where it's at. The cost will be on there. I'm happy to talk about it. The reality is this video is going to be up forever. So realize if prices change, it has to do with the amount of material. As of December 12th, the games course is $22 to do it. The full program is going to be $29. So I'm going to be offering kind of different packages. I'm also going to be offering like a 6-month package for under $100 to just get access to everything for 6 months. There will be the Prep Plus requirement. There is an LSAC sign-up fee requirement of $30. So those are things that right now, as of December 12th, are in place. But obviously, if you're watching this video in the future, realize that there are constantly changing rules with the licensing, costs of website maintenance and everything else, and how much it's putting together and how much material I've put into it. So that's today's price, but it will obviously be changing as we move forward. So in terms of what I am going to be offering is going to be that first phase material of we're going to cover all the question types. We're going to cover all the concepts. And I do, just as the people that have done my games course know from me, when I say it, I mean it. I do approach logical reasoning and reading differently than what else is out there. There's going to be a lot of commonality, but because of the nature of the fact that we're all teaching the same test, every company, but just as every company already that you may have approached is, if you've been studying, you may have seen differences. I'm very different in my approach. It's not I'm teaching out of somebody else's book. I have my methods that I use, not just for teaching, but it's the methods I use when I take tests, and that help me get the 180 and on my practices continue to score in that 180 range. So with that, the biggest question that I know a lot of people have is study plans. And that's kind of what those first couple questions are. So today, and I'll go into this more as we go through the course, but I want to talk about first and foremost, a few different drills and review techniques that are different than what's out there that honestly, I think is one of the biggest things that set me apart when I did it and sets my students apart in terms of their improvement. So first and foremost, every single logical reasoning and reading comprehension section you should do using this drill that I refer to as the confident drill. Now, a lot of you, I know just from the nature of people that are out there and who's reached out to me, a lot of people have heard the term of blind review. And if you have heard the term of blind review, my confident drill has similarity to that. It plays a similar function, but at the same time is extremely different in meaningful ways. And the differences are huge. This confident drill is actually a drill I came up with when I was like 8, 9 years old, trying to memorize flashcards. And it evolved over time, obviously, as things got more complex. But I attribute this drill format and review. It's really about reviewing. It's how we review ourselves and handle ourselves with confidence so that I can perform well. I can always get better and also perform well on test day. I've always been one of those good test takers. And the type of person, even when I don't do well on a test, I know I don't do well. If you're the type of person that walks out of a test and has no idea how you do, you could benefit even more from this confidence drill, because that's actually part of the big part. It's a big part of it. There's a lot of different elements to it, but benefits, I should say. There's a lot of different benefits to it. But anyway, let's get into what that confident drill actually is. So the confident drill, first and foremost, any logical reasoning or reading comprehension section you do, whatever the way you do it the first time you approach a section. So you pull up a section, you might be doing it untimed. You might be doing it timed. You might even be doing one of the drills that I'm going to discuss later. But the point is, whatever way you do it, while you're doing questions, if you are 1,000% sure you are getting this question correct, you should flag it. And yes, flagging the ones you're confident. I know most people flag the ones they're unsure of. I don't want to have degrees of a little unsure versus very unsure. What I want is to flip it. Either you absolutely know you're right or you don't flag it. And that may mean you're only flagging in the beginning 2, 3 questions, maybe even less. But I want you to think about flagging the ones you're 1,000% sure on. And on your first time doing it, I actually don't care how many you flag. You flag any amount that you feel confident on. The key to this drill starts coming in the second and third phases. The second and third phase. So the second phase, there's 3 phases to the confidence drill. First is doing a section, timed, untimed, it doesn't matter, but you're flagging the ones you're confident. The second step of this is going to be having what we call a target number of confident questions that you're pulling out as your most confident. So let's say you did a section that had 25 questions. You may have flagged 3 of them already as confident. I tell people to start at a target number of 7. So that if your target number is 7, you have to go and pull out your 7 most confident questions. If you had only flagged 3 on the first time, you start with those 3. And then what you do is you go back to the first question and start pulling out more questions that you at least feel most confident on. I realize now it's not about 1,000% confidence, but it's the ones that you're most confident on. And I realize I didn't say, but to clarify, after you're done with your first time, don't grade it. Don't grade it. Just put it down. We're not going to jump right into this step. So you do that first one, you flag any amount, and you don't grade it. The second time you come back to it without having graded it, and you pull out a target number. If the number we said was 7 and you've only flagged 3, you start with those 3, confirm you're still confident, find 4 more. If you flag 10, go through those 10 and pull out the 7 you're most confident on. The goal is on those 7, you need to be 7 for 7. So when you finish the second phase, you grade the section and jump right to those 7 questions, your target questions. If you are 7 for 7 and 100% accurate on those, that means you passed the confident drill for that section and your target goes up by 1, just 1. I don't care if you initially flagged 15 and got all 15 right. If the target was 7 and you got 7 for 7, the next section, your target is 8. If you miss any of those 7, you could get 6 or 7. You could get your target number all the way up over time, up to 15, and you get 14 out of 15 on your target questions. That is failing, and your target comes down by 1. The idea is that as you're doing sections, you're actually not just tracking your results of your score out of the 25 questions on a section, but you should be tracking how your target is going up or down. And because it's only going up or down by 1, it's going to have less variance and be more indicative of your ability than the actual results themselves. I'm sure countless of you do section after section and you'll see 14 right, 18 right, 15 right, 20 right, 14 right. And you're like up and down with those sections of like excitement and down and highs and lows. And the reality is that there's going to be variance on that number of questions you get right out of 25 always. To me, the confident number, that target number, as my students know, is to me the most indicative thing of your LSAT ability. And you can't, if you follow the rules, you're only going to go up by 1 by hitting 7 for 7, 8 for 8. Then the next one you get 9, you get 9 for 9, 10 for 10. You can only get up to that 15 if you earned it. You have to earn it section after section after section. And it takes a long time of a lot of sections where you pass, you fail, you pass, you fail. You go up to 11, down to 10, up to 11, down to 10. And a lot of people in the beginning, when they started this way, you start at 7, you fail, you go down to 8, 6, 5, 4. I was actually doing that with a student just yesterday. We were looking at his history. He started at the 7, went all the way down to 3 before he even hit his first perfect pass, then was 4, then he failed, went to 3 and 4 and 3, 4, 5, 4, 5, 6, 5. And he's all the way back up to 7, 8. He hit 8, he just failed. But the point is he's building back up. And sure enough, we're seeing improvement correlate directly in terms of his practice tests. To me, that confident target review is so important. LSAT, as you know, or hopefully know, and I will explain in the next week's session, the first session of the logical reasoning course, the test has only 1 right answer. There are 4 wrong answers. You need to prove to yourself that you know what that right answer is or 4 wrong answers. If you're 80 or 90% sure, you're not 100%, and we want to separate it out. I am actually a firm believer that you should not be worried about the questions you're most confused on. Too many people spend too much time focusing on the questions they're most confused on. We'll see them do that standard blind review where they end up, flagging a question, they're totally lost, and then they spend 10 minutes of their time trying to review that really tough question. And the reality is it probably confused me. Remember that 180, you can get 2 or 3 questions wrong often and still get a 180. You could be a 170 plus scorer getting about 85% accurate on logical reasoning. And so there's going to be questions that are just really freaking hard. And so you shouldn't be spending your time studying those. You should be trying to build your skill up from the bottom. And that's what this confident drill does. Now, third part. So first part of going back to confident drill, we said there's 3 parts. First part, you flag any amount, whatever format you're doing it, but you flag it, don't grade it. Second one, you pull out your target number. You make sure you're 100%. Otherwise, you have to lower it. If you are, you raise it. And then you grade it. The third part is actually reviewing from there. Another major, massive mistake people make in reviewing is they only review the ones they get wrong. That is a huge, colossal missed opportunity. I don't want to say failure because, yeah, you should look at the ones you get wrong too. But I actually find more value reviewing the ones that you got right, but weren't part of your target, weren't part of that confident target. If you got it right, but weren't 100% confident on it, then you have something to learn and you need to just figure out why that wrong answer is actually wrong. I want you to put words to it. Think of it like you have to tutor the person next to you of why that wrong one's wrong. That is what I used to do for myself that I studied. I would just start flagging questions if I was 100%, and any question I didn't flag, I would spend time reviewing. I was getting 175s, but only flagging half the test. So I would have half the test that I was reviewing, even though I got it right. I was spending more time reviewing the test to really, truly figure out why those wrong answers were wrong. And that is what I attribute so much of my huge growth from that 153 to my 180 and continuing to get better over time. So that's going to be the confident drill. That's the first drill. I want everybody, you can get started on it before we start the course. If you're doing it at any time, there's never a wrong time to start it. Now, the last thing I'm going to say with the confident drill, it actually has an element of really helping you on test day. My belief is that on test day, you should be doing the confident drill's first phase. I want you on test day flagging the questions you're confident on. It helps keep your mind grounded in the way you practiced, you're going to perform on test day. We see a lot of students posting and talking about how they underperformed on test day. And to me, that's because they approached the test differently than they were practicing. If you're practicing one way, you should be performing the same way on test day, and that score will correlate. The prep tests are official LSATs. They aren't some made up random thing. They are the actual tests. So if you can consistently hit a score on a prep test, then you should be able to replicate it on test day. And I want you to actually do that confident drill every single time you practice and then on test day to make sure you perform at that level. So confident drill is the #1 drill I wanted to talk about off the bat. All right. So I see just the, I got a question, follow-up question of, how do we determine the target number? I say start at the number 7. It's just a good number to start at. And then from there, you go up or down 1. You just pick a number you're starting at. 7, you might go down, you might go up from there. It really doesn't matter. Just start at 7 and then go up or down based on if you got perfect on your target, 7 for 7, then you go up to 8. If you got perfect at 8, you go up to 9. If you miss 9, you go back to 8. And you keep doing that forever. All right, so I'm going to call on the first person who's got their hand raised. Letitia. Hey, Letitia, I call on you, but you're on mute. How you doing?
Hey.
How you doing?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. What can I do for you?
Okay, I know you said you can't ask, I couldn't ask, well, we can't ask specific LSAT questions.
Like prep test questions. Sorry, I had to clarify. Yeah.
Okay, because I'm taking it in January. And I totally I raised my hand earlier and I forgot what I was going to ask.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. No,
I'm sorry.
If you think about it, feel free to either ask again, or raise your hand, or send me an email or something like that. Yeah, so basically to clarify, and I realized someone asked that question in the text there. So today we're going to talk about general strategies. I'm not going to address any prep tests because I can't. And anything about certain question types, I'm generally going to shy away from because that's what the program coming up is going to be about.
It was about a specific question type, so I can wait.
Yeah, if I will be covering every single question type, but definitely, you know, if someone has like a question, I might be able to answer it, but we'll see. And then I'm going to close the chat after this because it's distracting me too. But there was a question of, do we only review the questions we got right? It's not that we only review the ones you got right. During the confident drill, you should put the most emphasis. So your first review is of the ones you got right, but we're not confident on. Those are the first ones that you spend the most time on. On the ones you got wrong, I want you to review and try to understand why that right answer is right. Try to figure out what you got trapped by, but realize that if you're still confused, I'm okay with that. Okay, you're going to learn more from positive reinforcement than you are from the negative reinforcement. And as you start to see that, oh, wait a minute, I didn't fall for that trap, then you're going to start getting better improvement that way. So both are important, looking at the ones you got right and the ones you got wrong. But the ones you got right, but we're not confident, are actually where you're going to get the most value out of. So do it all, but definitely don't overlook those ones you got right and we're not confident. All right. So with that, I'm going to call on Lydia.
Hi, so I just wanted to ask kind of how do you calculate a reasonable scoring goal? So for me, I got like blind practice tests. It was just assigned in a class. I scored a 162. Yep. And then I took the official test in August and got a 168. But that was actually a 9-point drop from my last 3 practice tests. So I'm going into the January Lsat, and I kind of want to know what's a reasonable scoring goal and how do I prevent that huge drop in performance on test day again?
Yeah, so a few parts to that question. So I'm going to address the last part first. So preventing the huge drop. For me, it actually is going to be best done from, hold on, I realize the chat box is still coming up and distracting me. Okay, so the best thing is that confident drill. We're talking about that confident drill that I just was talking about in terms of make sure that you have an approach that you're doing on practice tests and the confidence. So let me say it this way. When it comes time to test day, what's going to happen is there's this repeatable, unable to ever actually simulate. There's no simulation for this test day anxiety, that test day moment of the, oh my God, this is real. And, or if you miss a question and that like gut punch that you get because it counts and you just know. So those types of things are what ultimately lead to the drops. And there's no way to simulate it. So what we have to do is we have to be prepared to make ourselves more comfortable for when it happens. We have to mentally be ready for it and be practicing ways to make ourselves more comfortable for when that inevitably happens. So first and foremost is the confident drill. What it is a little bit of like a subconscious practice that you're going to develop. At first, it's going to be more conscious while you practice, but if you do it for the few weeks in a row, you start to get to the point where you just naturally start flagging confident and you just keep asking yourself, am I 100% sure? Yes, this way. And it forces yourself to apply that same level of logic to every question on your actual test as you do on your practice test. So that's number one. Number two, the other big thing I tell people to do is practicing various things in what I call uncontrolled environments. Uncontrolled environments can be, if you live with people, go to a kitchen and put up a sign that's like, act like I'm not here, but don't talk to me. And like, let them walk around you and talk and they eat food and cook and whatever while you're sitting trying to do some else at work. Try to go sit outside with noises or whatever, obviously, you know, COVID, socially distant, whatever, but try to go in those circumstances, create uncomfortable environments. You can do it in your own room, just throw on TV really loud in the background while you're trying to zone out the TV. Learn to zone out the outside. And then the last thing with that is also start learning to cut a minute or two off, get to 34 minutes, practice 33 minutes, just practice being uncomfortable. And the more you practice being uncomfortable and learn to overcome that, is the better you're actually going to maintain that score on your test day performance. So that's that second part of it. The first part of the question was, what is a good score goal and how do you determine that? So first and foremost, the number one thing is what your school goals are. If there's a certain school that you're targeting, you should understand what numbers get accepted, what numbers get you scholarship, what numbers on the lower side might be close to acceptable, but it's that 50-50, and start understanding those numbers. And then you set your goals around those schools. If your goal is best school, which Lydia, you have great scores. I'm sure maybe you have scores like whatever the best possible school I could get into is, or whatever the most amount of money is. So then you set the goal for the top. I mean, look, I'll tell you, I got a 171 the first time I took it. So my path was, I got a 153 on my cold. I did one of those, corporate company programs and learned. And by the end, I was scoring in the 160s. I took a June Lsat. I had started studying in about late January of 2008. Took a June 2008 test. I got a 171, and that was me a little bit underperforming, and I was deciding whether to retake or not. And I had so many people being like, Brandon, 171 is amazing. And it is. It's a great score. But I knew I was capable of more. What I did to really reaffirm it was I actually sat down and took a practice test in one of those uncontrolled, like minimum timing, and not having looked at the test in like a month because I had gotten my score and was debating. So I sat down and I got like a 173 or 4 or something like that. Basically, I beat my 171's practice score. And I was like, look, if I can do it after all those things, a month off, bad conditions, still beat that score, I owe it to myself to take it again. And back when I took the LSAT, they only offered the LSAT 4 times. So the next test after June wasn't until October. I had no choice but to study for that next 3 months or whatever it was. So I decided to really commit myself. And eventually I started scoring higher and higher and higher and higher. And I ended up hitting that 180. So I'm a personal tale of not setting a cap on a score. Now, on the flip side of that, I want to recognize not everyone's going to get a 180. It's actually statistically impossible. The whole test is on a curve. It's something where they are trying to get a certain number of people scoring every single score point. So as students are getting better prepared, it becomes that much harder to maintain a higher score. So I've had these students come in and be like, 170 or bust, 170 or bust, 170 or bust. And they really work hard and they study a long time. They start at 138, 140, and they work hard. They get to 160, 164, 165, and they just don't see that improvement as much at that point. And there are certain things I've worked with students that I realize that ability is maybe just struggling to grasp a certain concept that's causing them to keep missing those types of questions. And so, realize that at certain points in time, there are certain limits to how fast you can grow. And I would never tell that 165 student they can't get to 170. But if they've already studied a year and got there, and over the last 3 months, they haven't, they've tried changing it up, they've tried doing all the different drills, and it's just not happening. Maybe it's time to just apply with that score anyway. So you got to balance it also with when that timeline of an application is. I wouldn't tell that student to, especially if they have a great GPA, to wait a year for, the next application cycle to try and get 170 because there's such a world of difference. I mean, is there a difference? Of course, but like, you got to know your personal circumstance. So something that my background is definitely more of that personalized prep. I've always worked with, I started my career doing one-on-one only, slowly started doing the semi-privates. Then I started doing these Ave Maria programs where we had 30, 40, 50, but I still mostly was working personal. And so it's really because I know that the true answer is a personal answer. So I can speak from broad generalities, and I am trying to and getting into this, but realize that everybody's circumstance is different. So for yourself, if you're deciding to retake, I actually just had a student, I think he even talked about it on Reddit, where he was very similar to you. I forgot what his first score was, but it was like 170, 171 on the first one, despite scoring the mid to high 170s. He decided, we had the same conversation we just had that I just told you guys. He decided to retake it. He got a 179. So it's not just me, it's other people too doing that. So if you're capable and you feel like you owe it to yourself, go for it. Don't sell yourself short. But also at the same time, if you've outscored yourself or you have a great score and it's like about delaying another year to just try and get a few more points, I'm not that type of person that thinks you have to do that. So I realize that's a long-winded answer to it, but I wanted to make sure I addressed it, not just to Lydia, but to everyone. All right, so that was Lydia, Letitia, Blake Hawthorne. Hey, Blake.
Hey, Brandon, how's it going?
Good. How's it going with you?
Pretty good. I had a question more so just about like general tips slash best practices for like specifically about the Lsat Flex and the reading comprehension section. So from personal experience, prior to like jumping to now doing everything solely on my computer, I'd be taking all the tests and practice problems, you know, pen and paper using like the test books, right? And fly through reading comp, but my style's, you know, pretty pencil.
So you've been using, I literally got my stack of books right here like this.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
My style is pretty like really quickly pencil to paper, you know, circle keywords, kind of write things out on the side, etc. And I've noticed that I think just naturally I'm a slower reader if I'm reading something on the computer versus in front of me on pen and paper. But because of that, I'm like sometimes finding myself deal with the time constraint of the reading comp. So it's not so much that like I'm getting ones wrong, but I just actually sometimes don't even get to them because I'm reading slow or I'm fumbling with like the highlighting tools on the digital version and whatnot. So just have you had any like discussion?
Yeah, I personally went through it. I totally was so accustomed to the paper and pencil, and same way I'm not a big note taker, but I definitely love just like having my pencil on the paper. I really was a believer in that. And it definitely was a transition for me in switching over to the digital. You definitely want to do it, you know, as quickly as possible. I used to, when it first was like, hey, let's use the practice books because that's where the material was until they launched Prep Plus back in March, when it actually was coincidental timing with the pandemic and the switch to Flex and all that. They launched the Prep Plus platform just before that. But with that transition, I tell people now, just start from day one that way. Obviously, you're not in that boat. You just should switch now. Now, in terms of getting better with that, it's actually a good time to bring up another drill. And again, all these drills I will bring up as part of the full course when I do that. But one of my other big drills I tell people to do to get better at that, exactly that type of thing of timing and learning to read more carefully, etc., is what I call the cover-up drill. So the cover-up drill is the idea that when you're doing a logical reasoning or reading, so this is again only for logical reasoning and reading, you should read the passage or stimulus and have covered up, whether it's an actual sticky pad on your screen or if you use like, you know, on a Mac, you use the note function to cover up the question. So you cover up the answers, whatever. You can let yourself see the question stem to logical reasoning so that you know what the question type is, but you don't let yourself look at the answers. When you're done reading the stimulus or passage, you have to move that cover from the answers over to the passage slash stimulus. So you cover up the passage slash stimulus while you're answering the question. Now you are allowed in a full section during this drill to uncover 8 times. So it's about 1 in 3 questions or so, 1 in 3, 1 in 4 questions. You're allowed to start uncovering the passage. Now, when you uncover, you have to move that cover back from the stimulus over to the answers. So the idea of the cover up is at no point can you have the answers and the stimulus or passage on the screen at the same time. You have to have one or the other covered up. And so the idea is you'll read it carefully that first time, you go to the answers ready to, and this forces you to work on your short-term memory, that making sure you're reading it, processing it carefully enough. Blake, you're still with me?
Yeah, I'm here.
So let me ask you this. When you do, obviously on test day, I'm not going to tell you to do the cover up, right? Or on your practice test, don't formally do the cover up where you actually cover up the stimulus or passage. Like that wouldn't make sense. But so when you do the cover up, would you say you're probably going to read it more thoroughly, less thoroughly? Like, what do you think?
If I'm covering up the entire passage, yeah, I'm gonna definitely read it more thoroughly.
You're going to read it more thoroughly. And everyone else watching this, I'm sure, is kind of thinking the same thing. It's actually a trick question, and it highlights part of the problem. You should always be reading at your most thorough level when you're reading for the LSAT. So if doing the cover-up drill forces you to read more thoroughly, then you weren't reading right to begin with.
That's true. That's a good point.
And so this is where the cover, now, why do I do the cover up drill? Because most people need that cover up drill to push yourself, and you find and you like discover this new gear of reading thoroughly when you don't have that quote unquote crutch of going back. I recognize you can't be perfect, which is why the cover up, you start with 8 look backs where you can uncover 8 uncovers. And over time, I tell like students that are scoring really well, I tell them to try and cut that down, go down to 6 or 4, try to limit it down. And in reading comp, if they have that, like in the last line of the last passage, they say blah, blah, blah. And that if you need to go back to even look at that line reference, that counts as one of your 8. So you really have to work on that working memory to make sure that you're reading it carefully and being able to identify the right features at that time. If you're doing the cover up, there shouldn't be a timing issue, because really where most everyone loses the most time is in the 1, going back, and 2, debating between answers you're not sure about. Mm-hmm. And this comes back to also the confident drill, where if you're debating between 2 answers and you're just not confident, just remember it's a non-confident question, pick one, move on. The reality is you're not going to be much more than 50-50 if you're not confident. That's just the reality. If you're between the 2, it doesn't matter how much time or thought you put into it. You just got to start picking one and moving on. So that's where that confident, and you can do confident and cover up. It's something I have a lot of my students in all my courses doing a lot, is both the cover up for that first time, and then you do that target review with the confident drill afterwards. And putting those 2 together should hopefully help you get that timing down.
Cool. Makes sense. Thank you.
My pleasure. All right. So next person, Kemily.
Hi, you pretty much already answered my question. It was regarding timing. I find that I spend a lot of time on some questions, and often at times it's between 2 answers. Like there's 2 choices.
Yeah.
And I spend a lot of time on that, and then I turn around and I pick the wrong answer, which makes me even more upset.
Yeah, and this is such a common comment that you're making. And I'll say this, every student I have between 150 and 180 students, every single one of them, on pretty much every question, they're between 2.
Yes.
If you're not confident, you're between 2. The difference between the 150 and the 180 is back to that confident. It's finding that one little thing about the wrong answer that makes it wrong. And all of a sudden you go from not confident to now confident. Now, having said that, catching that thing can be really hard. That's why this test is really hard. Remember that, as I said earlier, the average 170 scorer actually gets about 22 questions right on logical reasoning. If you do the math on that, that's about 88% on logical reasoning. 88%. That means the 170 scorers are 88% right. And that 12% they're getting wrong are not the only ones they were unsure of. They probably had a bunch of 50-50s and they just got half of them right. So that means about 24%, or 1 in 4 questions, 170 scorers are going to be unsure about. So if you're lower than a 170 score, you're going to have more than 1 in 4 questions that you're just in this world of 50-50 on. And you have to learn to recognize during test day, like, or a practice section or a time section, during that first time, you just can't spend the time debating. Realize it's not a confident, you're not going to flag it, and you're going to pick one and you're going to move on. Spend the time reviewing. Remember, the third part of that confident drill is to make sure that on the third one, you're going over it, especially the ones you got right. Because now what I want you to do is think about that on the ones, just as much as you're saying every time you get it wrong, you were between 2, I guarantee you there's a ton that you were just as much 50-50, but ended up getting it right. And I want you to look at those and think about what your mindset was in picking that one versus the other, and start giving an explanation as to why that wrong one's wrong. And the more you do that, the more we'll find just, again, that extra question or 2 over time to be better. And that's the thing with this test, is it's really about slow and steady progress. And the confident drill is exactly that, with the 1 up, 1 down, that type of thing.
Thank you.
My pleasure. So next question, Sandy.
Hi there.
Hi.
I just had a quick question. So I over the summer, I took a prep class and I have been prepping on and off on my own, but school got in the way and like everything that's going on, I haven't been practicing lately. So once winter break hits, I'm going to start up again. And I just wanted to know, like, I'm going to take another diagnostic test. Should I do a timed test or should I take it untimed?
So initial diagnostics, I like, and the like reset diagnostics, I like timed.
Mhm.
But from there on in, I apologize if I missed it. When did you say you're planning on taking the next test?
In April.
In April. So for me, I wouldn't even start worrying about timing until
Mhm.
you get to like February.
Okay.
So as an initial, if you're just starting your prep or you're restarting your prep, to get a fair diagnostic, you want to take it timed. But
Right.
as you're working on your skills and getting better, I mostly do what I call either untimed or what I call timed up sections. I'm really big proponent of what I call timed up sections, where you kind of have that clock going in your, so you know there's a clock on you, but you
Right.
see how long it takes you. And if it takes you, if 35 minutes is the standard time and it takes you 47 minutes, okay, don't worry about it. Just keep track of, okay, I'm about 47 minutes right now. And over time, you slowly start chipping away at it. And really, until I'm going to more formally go over this in the full course thing, but really, you want to start slowly chipping away at it. And really, only about that 6 weeks or so out from a test is when we start being really strict with that 35-minute timing.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you.
My pleasure. All right. Next, Desiree. Hi, Desiree. You're on mute right now, so
Hi, can you hear me?
yeah, now I can. There you go. How you doing, Desiree?
Okay, I'm good, thank you. So my question is basically, it seems like some kind of test prep sources put the upper limit of how many LSAT prep tests you should take a week at 2 to prevent fatigue. But I was wondering if you basically have the time or kind of like the appetite or motivation to do more, would you recommend doing more or just kind of following their advice?
Yeah, it's a tricky question. I've been personally on both extremes. So I talked about how I started my prep of January of 2008. I did a program, got myself ready in that like 160 range, and school ended in May, like first week May. And I had from then until June to just study for LSAT. And it was like the first week of June. So it was like 6 weeks. I literally took 30 tests in 30 days. And not only did I fatigue and then end up underperforming on test day, my improvement was minimal, I think, relative to what I did this next time, was more of less tests, more review. I'm actually a firm believer in redoing sections that you did, let's say 3, 4, 5 weeks ago. Yes, if you remember the answer, but go through the reasoning in your head as to why it's wrong. So when we say 2 tests, I mean, if I try to put it in, again, this is one of those questions where it's all personal. If you have all the time in the world and you're ready to study, I think of it as you can put in 2 hour to 3 hour, what I call sittings of LSAT at a time. And you really shouldn't do more. Like some days you could do 2 sittings, but you really shouldn't be doing 2 sittings every day, like 6 hours. It should be 2 to 3 hours most days, with a couple days maybe of the 4 to 6 hours. And so just make sure that it's not about volume of tests per se, but thoroughness of review. I would much rather you do 4 hours a day of breaking down 3 tests, let's say, but in really in-depth way, than doing 6 tests in 6 days. So that's where I think about it. I do talk about, I said at the beginning, the consistency is key. So an hour to 2 hours is what I say is like the really good number. If you could get that 2 hours a day, 5, 6 days a week, notice I'm still saying take a day or 2 off a week, but 5, 6 days a week of 2 hours a day, whatever you're getting done in then, but don't be in a race to finish material. Make sure you're thoroughly reviewing. Again, back to the confident drill, it forces you to almost go through a section 3 times because you got to do it the first time. Then you got to follow it up with the target review. Then you got to follow it up with the actual grading and reviewing and looking at the right answers. So it could end up taking you 2 days and a total of 2 hours over 2 days to just do one section if done right. So that's kind of my answer to that. Is that I know it's abstract, but is that a clear enough answer?
Yes, it is. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Okay, I want to give everybody a chance that showed up today to ask questions, so I'm going to keep going here. Okay, Kritika.
Hi there.
Hi, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good.
So my question is a little more catered to my journey in this whole process. So
Sure.
I basically started up studying again. When I was taking practice tests, I kind of scored in the high 140s. And I was not a little, but I was very much discouraged from taking this exam again, but I realized I didn't want to give up on it. So what do you suggest are some kind of practice methods or like study, I guess, tips, or what your advice would be for me to, go forward and like tackle this test to get above that 150 mark?
Yeah, so besides the general drilling, like I know this is going to sound a little self-serving, but the course that I have coming up, if you do participate, and remember the lessons are going to be free, the homework's going to be part of the paid package, but you'll see in the lessons alone, there's like certain thought processes that really the courses don't explain properly, that are so fundamental and are such a big foundation of this test. So many courses just focus on the tricks and like conditionality, and it's like, I don't want to name the courses on a video like this, but there's courses that spend like the first 3-4 weeks just drilling conditionality, and it's like they spend so much time on things that are part of the test, but not just laying a good foundation. And students, to me, that are under 150 are significantly lacking in that foundation. And so that first lesson that we even do, that was supposed to be today, but we're going to do it in a week from today on December 19th, that will start changing the way you think and process. And some of those fundamentals we talk about, you really got to focus on making sure you understand it. One of the big pitfalls I see students falling in when they do stay below 150 is and obviously I'm generalizing here, so it may not be specifically yourself, but I see a lot of students putting a heavy emphasis on memorizing. They think, oh, if I memorize this question type and I memorize this trick and I memorize this thing, then my score will perform. And the reality is that's not how you get better. I've had students literally that do my course. This happened this summer. I had a student that took my course last fall, like 2019 in September. It was like a course that went September to October in 2019, and was planning on taking the test this past summer. She called me up in like June of 2020 now, and was scoring 170, but she said she plateaued at the low 170s. And we started talking, and like, I was like, okay, what kind of question is this? And she's like, oh, I don't really know the question types. Like, I forgot that I needed to know that. Do I need to know that? And I was like, well, it's going to help you, especially in the ones she was bringing up to me. It made a difference of what kind of question type. But my point is, she was getting 170 and literally forgot everything there was to know about every single question type. And she was scoring in the 170. Meanwhile, I have countless students that come to me a lot of the times from those other programs, like, I know my question types, I know my concepts, I know conditional, but yet I'm scoring below 150. And it's because the emphasis is put on memorizing question types, which are really like tricks rather than building the skills. And so what I'm going to put a big emphasis on in the course is building skill sets. In fact, like the first, I think I keep debating how I want to end up doing it. But that first lesson, we're going to be doing, especially the first segment, it's going to be like almost 2 hours. We're going to be doing very few actual LSAT questions. And it's going to be stuff that is going to be different than how others are breaking it down, and creating that foundation of skill.
Got it. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. All right. Next up, Supan.
Hey there, how are you doing?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. Just a quick question. So I'm currently a university student and I prepped for the LSAT over the summer, and I was getting about 156, 157, like my best scores. And now I'm writing the January one, but I haven't had time to prep because of my school and my courses. So I'll be taking the winter break to prep for the January LSAT. Do you think it's a good idea? And how many hours a day would you recommend? to
Yeah, I
prep?
mean, I will say this because I'm hearing both the accent and you said you're writing the test, so you're in Canada, correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So full disclosure, I know I the way I think about it, my full-time career is LSAT tutoring. From doing that, and I'm on the Reddits, I'm on Facebook, whatever, on the Facebook group. So I know a lot about, especially having helped my students, the American. But when it comes to the Canadian law schools, I'm full disclosure, I do not have anywhere near expertise to speak from the truest authority of what the best answer is. So I guess I can try and answer it from what I know about the American schools. So the thought is that when it comes to the American schools, and I know that there's differences with the Canadian schools, you can take the LSAT multiple times. You have to report every score, but the score that matters the most is the highest. That is specifically because when even though you have to tell the schools every LSAT score, the schools, the American law schools, only have to tell the American Bar Association, which is what they ultimately use to make the medians and the rankings, et cetera. The only score the American schools have to ever disclose is your highest. So this is where you can strategize around the idea of retaking to get a higher score and not worrying about if it goes down a couple points, it's not a big deal at all. And so you want to be balancing those factors. On the flip side of just retaking is also the mindset of when the tests are. We're in the midst of a rolling application cycle. So you want to get that application in as soon as possible. So if you can get a better score or a goal score by January, go for it, definitely better. But if you feel that going for February is going to make such a world of a difference in your LSAT score, or going for April is going to make a world of a difference in your LSAT score, then you should just delay, with the big asterisk being you got to look at the schools that you're trying to apply to. I know a lot of for example, California law schools won't accept the February or April LSATs. And so you have to start looking at what those schools are going to look at those scores with. Now, at the same time, I've had people that are like, I'm a year behind, like I'm not applying this cycle, but I just want to take advantage of my winter break and take the test in January so that I'm done. And that is the type of thing I'd say never do. So it's something that if you have no reason to apply now, you should give yourself as much time as possible. So it really comes back to that balancing of when your applications would be due at the latest and that cost benefit analysis of how late you're going to apply versus what kind of improvement you're going to get. Now, the last thing on that I'm going to say, and this applies to everyone, including the Canadian law students too, when it comes to the LSAT itself, the deadline already passed for January, so that means that you're already signed up. The deadline for February's LSAT is in January, well before you're even going to find out your scores for, well before you find out your scores from January. So what ends up happening, unfortunately, there's this logistical pressure that you're going to have to probably, or it would be advisable to sign up for the February test just to have that option. And if you do, what happens is, as much as LSAT schools will see every score, if you withdraw for this January 16th test the day before, January 15th, so the day before the official start date. So I know with the flex test, they're offering a few different days. You might end up taking it on January 18th, 19th, but January 15th, the day before the official day, if you withdraw from the test, you do forfeit the $200 sign-up fee, but schools will have no idea you signed up. So for a lot of people in your type of situation, what ends up happening is you study hard and you work towards that January. And as you get closer to the test is when you'll actually make that determination of whether or not it's worth taking. And again, having February in your back pocket and just weighing that $200 forfeit fee. And so there's all those personal factors to decide, but at least it's not like you have to make the decision on December 12th of whether you're definitively taking January.
Okay, and what if, like I said, I'm getting 156, 157 on my prep test. So what if I wanted to aim for a 165? How many hours a day
back
do
to
you
that
think?
same mindset of what I was saying with see how you're doing in January. Is it possible? I mean, yeah, I've had students that do that. It happens all the time. When I say it happens all the time, it's not most people. It also depends on how much work you've already done, what your study plan is going to be. Like if you're planning on using new methodology, that tends to give perhaps a potential of bigger improvements, but it also depends on which methodology you were using before, which methodology you're switching to. I know, for example, how kind of LSAT Wizard got blown up initially was because my games course was really helping people that had been struggling with even some of the other big popular courses out there. And if you're going from games of 10 to games of 20, I mean, yeah, there's your point improvement, especially on a flex test. 10 points in games is very well going to be 7-8 LSAT points alone. So it also depends on that kind of breakdown that you have and what kind of change you're going to make in your approach, which then comes back to the point of you can mentally go for January, and as you get closer, make that decision. One universal comment I'll make to everyone as well, if you are somebody that is practicing, let me kind of rephrase this. Don't expect test day to be better than your highest LSAT practice test. Can it happen? Rarely, but it's so rare that I never want you counting on it. So if your goal is 165 and your highest practice test leading into it is a 161, and to you, 165 is make or break. If I don't get a 165, I'm not even going to apply to law school. And that is based on good reasons. I don't know whether it would be based on good reasons, but that's the position you have. Then don't take the January LSAT thinking, well, maybe I will get the 165 on January. I don't do that, because the odds that you're going to get that type of 4-point improvement on actual test day is so small. So don't even think about taking a test until you're at least hit that goal score at least once on a practice test.
Sounds good. Thank you.
My pleasure. All right, where were we on the list here? Going down the list of everyone who was raising their hands. All right, down here. Sandra.
Hi, Brandon.
Hi, Sandra. How you doing?
Good. Let me see if I can articulate this. I've been doing the time sections, and that's, for example, in the logical reasoning, I've been pretty consistent, getting about 17 to 19 correct. And then what I do is I go back, and I'm going to call it the confident drill and not the blind review. I like that. I like that positive mindset. But I've been down to those 50-50. And my thinking is right now is that I need to change my approach, because I'm not improving. And I was actually going to start going back this week, and I was going to just focus on those, like, why am I doing this? Why am I getting down to these two, and I'm always choosing the wrong answer? So, and I don't know if I should just start where I'm at right now. Should I start doing the target at 7?
Yeah, so I would still start at the target of 7. And the change to confident drill is exactly, I mean, you're I don't know how much you are following everybody else's questions, but this sentiment is being echoed. I think this is the 3rd student, and it's okay because everyone's got a little bit different of take on it, but at least addressing the sentiment of the 50-50. And as I said, every student from 150 to 180 will have an element of that. What I think gets in people's heads, and I heard you make the comment of that you're just always getting it wrong. What the confident drill is going to expose is that you're getting it right as much as if not more than you're getting it wrong when you're actually 50-50. What you're doing, my guess, especially based on what you said, I'm going to make one of these educated prediction guesses. To date, when you review a test, are you reviewing the ones you just get wrong?
No, I'm reviewing the entire test. And that's why I was just going to change my approach and only go to the ones I got wrong.
So then what I would say is, and this is when you review the entire test, that's on the other side of it. Let's go talk about it in perspective of that confident drill again. What happens is there are some questions, you're at a level of getting 17 to 19, right? Which is a great score. A lot of people would love to get that score, but I also recognize we never settle, right? I'm in mindset. It's how I got my 180, never settle. So there's always more points. But at least where you're at right now, you're getting a lot of questions right. I would imagine you could probably hit that 7 on your first try, right? Do you feel that, like, when you go to do that confident drill, if I asked you to pull out 7 questions that you're 100% right on, you could pull out 7 and go 7 for 7?
I do, because I do feel like a lot of them, yeah, I got this. I know.
Yeah, exactly.
I
Like,
feel
I
pretty
got
good
this, and
about
I
it.
want you to
Yeah.
start proving that. I want you to start proving that. And what you're going to notice is on the when you don't do the confident drill and you're reviewing every question, we start getting this confirmation bias during review. So if you review every single question and you look at question 1 and it's like a main conclusion question, you identify the conclusion, you know it's right, you look at it, you got it right, you're not actually going to give much mental effort to that review, right? Because you're going to say to yourself, oh, this was one of those, I had it. Like, I don't even need, and it's human nature. It's impossible not to say to yourself, I knew that. Of course I knew that. That's why I got it right. It's question 1. I got it right. So that part of your mindset is going to set in no matter what when you're reviewing every question. When you do the confident drill, you're pulling out those 7, 8, 9 questions that you are most confident on. So now when you're reviewing the ones you got right, but weren't part of your target, if you look at it and go, oh yeah, Sandra, I got this, like this, I knew that you knew that. You got to remind yourself, no, you didn't. Otherwise it would have been part of your target number.
Yeah.
So now you're going to force yourself to put that mental effort to really focus on this question and figure out why those ones you got right. But what was that little thing that made you hesitant? There's something that made you hesitant on that question. And figure out on those questions what it is that's making you initially a little hesitant, even though maybe you're more like 80 or 90% sure, you just weren't at that 100% level yet for that question. That's where your improvement's going to come from. You will never overcome the 50-50 fully. Never, ever. What's going to happen is you're going to get more questions going from your 70, 80% into your 100% bank. But you're never, like literally, I'm going to tell you, I am a person who got a 180. I could get a 180 on half the tests that I take, if not more. And I have questions. I get about, out of 25 LRs, I can do about 22 confident. There's 3-4 questions every single LSAT that I'm like, I think I'm right. I'm probably 70, 80, but I'm not 100%. And when I get it wrong, I'm between 2. So I still experience that same thing myself. You're never, ever, ever going to overcome that full 50-50. Okay. It's always going to exist. It's just to what degree. So the confident drill is showing the ones that you can be confident to separate the ones you're still 50-50 on.
Okay. Thanks for that. That really helps a lot.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I just want to say that I'm killing the LG because of your course. So.
Oh, I'm so happy. Yeah.
So I am scoring in the low 160s. So because I give a lot of credit to you and your course. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm glad that it helped. All right. So next person, Catherine.
Hi.
Hi, how you doing?
Good. Thank you so much for this. I took a cold diagnostic about 3 months ago and I got a 164. And so I kind of thought like, oh, I can self-study and just do this by myself.
Yeah.
And I jumped to a 169 after a month, and then I kind of stayed there for 2 months. And so I was wondering, like, so all I've been doing is just practice tests and then reviewing them. And I think your confidence drill will be super helpful for me. But do you have anything else, like any other way I should approach this? Am I doing something wrong?
Yeah, so 164 cold, and it was timed. It was under time conditions. Yeah. So like, let me put in perspective for people that hear that, like anything in the 150s cold is a great cold. I have in my career worked personally with less than 10 students that have started in that 160 level. And I've actually found a lot of them, and it doesn't sound like you are because you're doing all of these things, but a lot of them, it almost, and just remember, just because you started there doesn't mean you're guaranteed that 175 or anything. And so sometimes people start getting that overconfidence of, oh, I'm in that 164, like I don't have to study. And it's like, I don't think you're getting that, but I've found correlations with that. So if anybody in the future is watching it and it's like, you know, I got a 160, like that's an amazing, amazing cold. I don't want to get it. I don't want to sell it any other way. It's amazing. And I would expect with the right studying that you should be able to get to that 170, no problem. But it doesn't, you still have to work as hard as anyone else to get that type of improvement. In fact, to me, the points from 169 to the up, anywhere up from there are honestly some of the hardest points to get, because it really takes mastery of understanding those fundamental concepts. And what ends up happening for a student like yourself is you don't know what you don't know. So let me ask, do you have like any sort of philosophy background or logic-based background, math or anything like that?
No, wait, so that actually leads to my next question a little bit, but I'm on a gap year before my first year in undergrad. And so I was gonna ask like if there was any drawback for taking the LSAT so early, but yeah.
Well, so I wouldn't actually sign up and take it, but don't study super hard, but take it one section at a time is what I would say. And really, you can practice it for like 2 years if you have the motivation as a light side hobby. Don't take a test until you've consistently started seeing the highest possible scores of those 177s, or when you get to your application year, taking the test that's right before the application year. So if you're going to apply in, let's say, September of, so I don't know what your timeline's like, but let's say September of 2023 is when you're going to apply. I wouldn't even think about taking the LSAT until summer, like June of 2023. Unless if you are consistently scoring in the super high 170s before then you can go take the test. But otherwise, I would just keep studying and give yourself as much time as possible, and do it light so that you don't burn out, and rotate between the sections so you don't burn out. Don't try to tackle the whole test at once. My point of what happens is, most people, what's interesting is 153 is the median LSAT after people study, but the average person that takes a cold is in the mid 140s, which is more like a 20th or 25th percentile LSAT score. So there is this huge discrepancy between where people start on the LSAT and where they end up on the LSAT. And that's for anybody that even just reads a book and doesn't do programs like this or more advanced programs. People that barely study, and they still see that type of improvement, because there are certain fundamentals that we don't come in with, and so we're scoring at those levels. When someone's coming in at a 164, it means they either have learned it or they more naturally are inclined towards those types of thinkings. But at the same time, I don't know if you were on when I was talking about the 2 phases. Were you on when I was talking about the 2 phases of prep? It was at the very beginning. So I'll just quickly recap. Remember, the first phase of LSAT prep is learning the actual concepts, strategies, fundamentals, etc. And then the second phase is execution. What happens is you've come in at a super high execution level without even maybe knowing what those concepts are. And so you still have to go through the same gambit of issues to make sure you're learning every single concept properly. And that's why students that even start at that level can't be like, well, then I don't need a prep program. It's like, no, you still need to learn every single concept in order to get to that 170 plus, because a 170 plus student has mastery of every single concept. You can't possibly learn how to do it right if you're not learning what the right technique is in the first place. Now, this is where I will say it gets a little bit hairy with like my advice here of students that do start at that super high level. Think of it similar to, let's say, an athlete. An athlete comes in and they're like, this is something, my actual personal background was sports management major, and I worked for, like, interned and worked for a couple different sports teams. And so I use a lot of sports analogies at times. So there's an old adage in sports scouting when you're scouting an athlete. Let's say there are 2 swimmers, and you're like a college recruiter for swimming. And these 2 high school swimmers, you're trying to decide which one you want to scout, and you're scouting both. They both swim the exact same speed. Let's say it's a racing of swimming, and they're the exact same speed. One of them has great form and one of them has terrible form. Which one would you say you would choose if you're the recruiter? The one with
First instinct, I was like, good form. But then I thought, like, if they have bad form, you can improve them either.
And that's exactly, everyone's first instinct is, oh, I want the one with good form. But the reality is you actually want the one with bad form, because if somebody's got bad form and swimming at that level, you want to change it to get to better form so that they could be even better. And so what I see is a lot of students who are starting in that 160s are like the people who are like swimming at like competitive speeds, like for college, they're like already swimming at a certain speed level for college, but like for competitive collegiate swimming, but they have terrible form. And it's like, that's a great opportunity to step in and be like, look, if we could get you to do good form, you're going to swim that much faster. But here's the reality in sports. Sometimes changing too much technique actually makes people worse. If you actually look at any athlete in any sport, very, very, very few have perfect technique. Everyone kind of has this like slight, like almost every single athlete has like mostly good technique, but they have their way of doing it. Right? It's actually like if you follow sports at all, and not necessarily you, Catherine, but anyone following it, like when you watch analysis, like there are the athletes that people point to and go, oh yeah, that's a guy that's perfect for him. Kids, if you're a kid at home, watch this guy, watch Joe whatever, because he's got perfect form. And it's like, well, what about all the other Major League Baseball players that have it? They're not good form. It's like, well, not really, but yet they're the Major League players. And that's because the best students find ways to blend proper technique into their natural ability. So this is where, when you're saying you've gotten some improvement, but not enough yet, it starts getting to that like personalized assessment, and it gets very hard without getting a tutor or some sort of really in-depth personal analysis to figure out what are those things that are causing you, like, is there something you just haven't learned yet and you don't realize it? Or is it your quote unquote bad form hitting a max limit? You know, maybe that bad form does have a max cap where, like I was saying, the swimmer's good enough to compete collegiately, but if they want to get, but that form will never get them to Olympic level. And if they want to be an Olympic level swimmer, they're going to have to change that form. And a good coach needs to be able to call that out. So that's kind of where that personalized tutoring comes into play to really start figuring out that type of assessment for yourself.
Okay, thank you. That actually puts into words a lot of what I was feeling, because when I first started studying for logic games, my scores would like tanked, and I was like, oh my god, what happened? And then they slowly like worked back up even higher. So
yeah, especially one thing that I'm going to say, and this is for everyone, if you go to take a cold diagnostic and it's that June 2007 test, that is like, actually, while it's the free one that's out there, it's one of like the easier game sections. And so we see people get like amazing game scores on that and amazing scores in general. It's actually statistically one of the easiest tests there is. If you look at the curve, it actually had the strictest curve of all time, indicating that the test material itself was easy, which means someone with bad form might be able to get away with it a lot more than normal. Just out of curiosity, was your diagnostic the June 2007 test?
let me see. No, it was the December 2015.
Okay, so it was like probably on the prep program. Sorry, you probably like on Law Hub. It was one of the free ones on Law Hub.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's good. They changed it on Law Hub, but they still have the free PDF of the June 2007. I will be using that test because that's what my marketing license will let me use for this program. But yeah, the point is that obviously everybody's different, but yeah, you might have some of those. Like you might have been able to apply certain natural things on that test, but as they start testing you in different ways, in more challenging ways, your natural limit is hitting a wall. And so you're going to have to take that step or two back to learn the right technique to be able to accelerate even higher on the tougher tests.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm taking up so much time, but I just want to circle back a little bit to my question about taking the test. My plan was kind of to take it right now during my gap year because I have this time and I thought I don't want to study for it while I'm in college. So like if I can hit consistently high scores, do you think there's like a drawback for
No, I think that score's good for 5 years. Schools ultimately they care about the number they get to use. So if you do get one of those high numbers, then great. The only thing I will say is this: any improvement you get will be with you literally forever. And I really, really mean this. This is one of my biggest things about LSAT prep. This is for everyone. Like LSAT changes the way you think. There's actually studies you can Google, like Berkeley did a study on this, on how learning an intensive LSAT prep literally changes your brain chemistry. It changes the way you think in a good way forever. I think a lot of the world would be a better place if people learned LSAT and learned to think like an LSAT thinker more often, because it's about thinking things through besides just like emotional reaction. It's like, what is the actual words on the page? And so you know, my point is that for yourself, it's a skill that you'll never lose. So if your gap year, you study really hard and then you start school, you don't have to study a lot at all, if at all, to maintain a score. You need to study consistently to improve a score, but to like maintain a score, you don't even need to study. So if you like take the semester of your sophomore year and you take it off from LSAT, but then winter break comes around again and you're like, all right, my winter break hobby is I'm going to do a couple hours of LSAT every other day. Well, then you will get back into it and keep getting better and better and better. And so this is why I would say, if you're not at that mid to high 170s, for yourself in particular, don't rush it. But if you can hit that mid to high 170s, then yeah, there's no reason not. Because the difference between a 175 and a 177 for a law school isn't really much, because it's above the median for every single school in the entire country.
All right. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Have a good one. All right, Julia.
Hi, how you doing?
Good. How you doing?
Good. I just had a question. So I did take critical thinking and I have taken logic and I just started studying, but I got this book and it's given me like a 4-week study plan. So like I was just wondering, and I'm taking the LSAT in January and I just graduated and got my bachelor's degree. So I have time before I even start applying and stuff. So I just was wondering, like, do you think that this 4-week study plan is a good thing, or should I
So let me
apply for the
try to
February?
clarify something. So you're looking to apply, like, technically ASAP to start law school by August 2021?
Yes.
Okay. So have you taken a cold diagnostic?
No, I have not yet because I just got done my finals like yesterday.
So this
So-
kind of is going to double down on what the advice I gave. I forgot her name, the Canadian student earlier, which was you're signed up for the January test?
Yes.
Okay.
And I have a lot of time on my hands and I'm ready to just buckle down.
This is the balance. You want to give yourself as much time as possible to study, but the earlier you end up applying, the better. And depending on your goal schools, you have to think about what schools you're looking at, what numbers will get you into that school, see where your cold diagnostics at, see how close to improvement, see how your progress goes over the next 4 or 5 weeks. I don't think those 4-week study plans are going to squeeze out your potential. Unfortunately, you're in a really tight boat where the reality is you'll probably get a lot more points if you waited till February and a ton more points if you waited till April. The question's going to be, if you get 4 more points in April, will the opportunities for law school still be there? And that answer depends on each school is different, and it depends year to year. And right now, the data is indicating that this is going to be a fairly competitive year relative to other years where I've had students wait till June and they get full scholarships to top 50 law schools from a June LSAT, like to start 2 months later. And I don't think that's going to be this year, but will February? I don't know, maybe. I think I was saying earlier, like a lot of the California schools are on tighter timelines. I think a lot of the T14 are on tighter timelines. So, you kind of have to weigh those pros and cons. What it would also come back to then is this is the comment I made to that Canadian student earlier, where as you get closer to the January 16th date, you have till January 15th to withdraw and schools won't even know that you signed up. So if you get to that second week of January and your practice tests and you're doing that study plan and your practice tests just aren't at that level for the schools that you think you're capable, then don't take January and then defer. Yes, you would forfeit the $200, but in the grand scheme of how I never like to speak for people's money, I recognize $200 is a big deal. But when weighing all the pros, cons of law school, you don't want to let a $200 decision have you take a test you're not ready for.
Yes, and I also paid, there's like the $45 you can pay it's like the first time you take the test.
Yeah, the score preview, I'm really torn about it. I've gone back and forth in my personal assessment of it. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but in the sense that it's new. So they just did that this year. Remember that when you cancel, schools will still see that you canceled. And the general assumption when you cancel is you didn't do well.
Yes, exactly.
So it's not like schools will not see the test. That would be worth the $45. How valuable is it to be able to cancel it afterwards? I guess minimally, but like it really isn't a huge deal. I just wouldn't lose sleep over it one way or the other.
Exactly. Yeah, but
Yeah.
I was thinking about taking the February one
Yeah,
because
well, I think you have to,
yeah.
again, a comment I made to that same student that was talking about the January test, and I said it about this in general for everyone taking January, there's this logistical problem where you kind of have to sign up for February no matter what, because by the time you take and then get your score from January, the February deadline's passed, and you don't want to miss out on the opportunity to take that February test because you waited to see how you did. I am very much a proponent of, it sucks, but chalking up the $200 and just signing up for that backup test. I'm a very strong proponent of that.
And I just had another question.
Yeah.
So where can I find like diagnostic tests? Because I honestly don't know anyone who's ever been in
Law Hub.
school, so
Law Hub.
Law Hub?
Every single LSAT prep company that is a, what's the word I want to use? Like a properly licensed company, like my company, like the other major name companies. What the technical requirement is to be an LSAT company is you need to be licensed by LSAT to provide those LSAT materials, to be able to teach that LSAT material. And so all licensed companies, all licensed instructors, now the licensing changed in March to this website called Law Hub. The website is lawhub.lsac.org. And the package is called Prep Plus, where students sign up for this $99 Prep Plus subscription. It gives you access to over 70 prep tests that you can take as either untimed or timed sections, timed tests. You can take as many as you want. You can check your old results. If you use one of the other LSAT companies, they should and need to be verifying that you have that subscription. Now, a lot of the websites will not have you take the tests on Law Hub. They'll have you take the test on their website, but it's just running on the back end through Law Hub, and you still need the Law Hub subscription to be able to do it. So no matter what, you have to sign up for the Law Hub subscription. Again, it's lawhub.lsac.org and sign up for Prep Plus. They do, when you make an account, they do have 4 tests for free. I think they just sent me an email literally yesterday, and I've been so crazy with my meetings with them and everything that I realized I didn't put it in my memory of what it was. I know they just updated how many the free ones are. Actually, maybe it's 3, but they added up 2 flex versions, and one of them is doubling down. I think it's 71, 73 in flex format, and then Maze Flex, I think. But anyway, they do have a few for free, so you could at least start there for the cold diagnostic, but eventually you're going to get that Prep Plus, and got to spring for that $99 package.
Okay, and so the law school, the lsac.org, they have like a Khan Academy where they like
Yeah.
but
So
my law advisor
Academy
told me
is a
about it.
free- So Khan Academy is a nonprofit company that is like any other test prep company in the sense of it's not an what I mean is it's not an LSAT LSAC run company. It's a separate company that because they're nonprofit, it was actually a very nice deal that they now are allowing Khan Academy to teach students without that Prep Plus package. However, the deal with Khan Academy, I have 2 main comments about. Before I get into the 2 comments on more of the quote unquote negative side, the positive is it's really nice and it's free, and they do explain a lot more than was available before they had that. So before Khan, there was nothing free, and so it really is nice that they have it as a free option. But there are 2 particular parameters about it that I have some issue with, of why I don't think it's the optimal study plan relative to what else is out there. First, I don't know whether it was LSAC or Khan that decided it, but the format of it is they use a bunch of different questions from a lot of the recent tests, but not the whole test. So when you go to actually take those recent tests, you've already seen some of those questions. And so you end up starting to like take tests that you already know some of the questions, and it like spoils the test kind of thing. And so that's kind of an annoying factor about it. And then the second thing is, as much as Khan is a big company, one of my general comments about LSAT prep in general, and Khan falls victim to the same thing, the big test prep companies that teach everything. So companies that do ACT, SAT, JMAT, GRE, all the LSAT, it's just another one of the tests they teach. Invariably, their content is lacking substantially in LSAT, good LSAT prep. And the reality is they teach it, these are corporations that they have kind of formulas in which they follow, and they mold the LSAT curriculum to the same general mold that the company was built on. And so, you know, the Kaplans and the Princeton and Khan, and I don't want like name dropping, whatever, but that's just my personal perspective of them, is they end up being too cookie cutter. I even know a lot of people that have worked at a lot of these companies, and they just are do it all. Same thing when you talk to tutors. If you're looking for a tutor and you're looking at somebody that does SAT, ACT, GMAT, GRE, they may not realize the full extent to which LSAT is so different than everything else. And so they start making the test seem like it's more cookie cutter than it is.
Okay.
It ends up being that, you know, that student earlier that was asking about like crossing the 150, and I was talking about how a lot of people memorize question types, and that's kind of Khan's approach is like, here's this question type, here's this question type, here's this cookie cutter concept, you should know this cookie cutter concept, but the test is a lot more abstract and conceptual than that. And so that's kind of why I mean, look, that's why I have my own course, my own prep program, but there are, even taking myself out of the equation, I think better fundamental curriculum than that.
Okay, thank you so much for your help.
My pleasure. Dorothy.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how you doing?
I'm fine. I think you answered some of my question because I am taking the January test, and I haven't taken a hard diagnostic yet. And I'll plan on doing that between today and tomorrow to kind of figure out where I am. But January is really the only time I really have to take the test. And so what score do you feel that, okay, if that I should be canceling my
Depends
test?
on the school you're applying to. I mean, there are schools that, you know, my quick synopsis of the law schools in general is, if you go to one of the top schools, I'm not going to say exact names and numbers, but if you go to one of the top schools, you can basically get a very high paying legal job no matter how well you do in law school. As you start going down the rankings, what starts happening is the schools start being more regionalized in terms of opportunity, being more limited to the region that the school is located in. And when you actually look up some of the employment data, a lot of the schools will vary greatly. Even, it's not just the ranking. Don't go by the ranking. You should look at the schools based on how they do in job placement in that region. And so that's where you want to think about what kind of law schools your score would correlate to and what that opportunity might be like. So if you live actually, let's use Ave Maria, who is our sponsor. You live in, or want to live in, the West Coast of Florida. And you look at what scores are good for Ave Maria School of Law, like, and you want to work there, then go to Ave Maria with that score if you got the score for Ave Maria. But if you don't have the score for Ave Maria, then you should be studying more or canceling to be able to get that score that gets you into Ave Maria. So that's where it really comes down to personal situations and what schools would accept you with those scores. And then also remember scholarship. I'm sure they're fine with me saying it, but like, I know Ave Maria gives out a lot of money. If you have a score that's good enough there, maybe you keep it, but you study again for the February or April test. You end up boosting it even more to get a scholarship to get in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead. Finish.
No. That's kind of I was gonna be like, so that's kind of my take on that.
Mm-hmm. So so this is the plan that I have for myself, even though I'm trying to take for January. I've taken some time off work to focus on the test. Once I get my high score, I'll keep working and studying and practicing to take all the way up until it's time to take the score. So I guess the January 16th test from here is basically almost a month from here.
Yeah.
And with constant studying, depending on where my base, hopefully I don't know what my base is, so I can't say what I got to work.
Exactly. And then you hope to get improvement, right? And that's why it's so, and you won't know, like, even when you have your base, you don't even know. Like, to me, a base is just that. It's a base. There are students that go up 10 points in a month. There are students that have gone up 20 points in a month. And there's students that don't see any improvement for at least 2 or 3 months. So, it really depends, obviously, student to student. We were talking about the 2 phases. First phase is learning what this test is all about. And the second phase is the continuous practice and getting better at it. And if let's just say you were to use my program, which again, I don't care that much whether you use my program or not, but like, you can get through. My games course was designed to be a 3-week program, and this LR and RC is going to be a 4-week program. And if you're doing them simultaneous, that means that you can get the entire first phase basically done before January with homework and review and all that. Are you going to be your best just by doing my program? No, unfortunately, I will never say that ever. You always would benefit from more time. But I understand life logistics and the application logistics and test, like when the test is logistics. So that's where, you have to do what is best for you in your circumstance. And that really is a personal thing that, no one can give you a universal answer to.
Right. One more question. So with the prep courses the classes that you're going to be teaching us, are you going to be going over some of the materials and explaining the different concepts too?
Oh yeah. So the idea is, games is already done, and all the homework explanations. It was 3-hour lessons plus, so it ended up being about 10 hours of lessons, and each lesson has assigned homework, and I have explanations to that homework. And then afterwards, there are 3 practice tests that I explained. I'm going to be doing something similar with the logical reasoning and reading. It's going to be, it's again, it's a 4-lesson series. What I'm going to be doing is 3. I think I still am tweaking it, the final couple lessons of exactly how, but essentially over those 4 lessons, I will be teaching every major concept and question type that you need to know. And then there's going to be homework that I'm going to be assigning and explaining those videos. The most of it's going to be behind that paywall that I'm keeping as low as I possibly can. The lessons of LR and RC that are going to be like on these Saturdays, those are free, and I'm going to be putting them on YouTube afterwards.
Okay, so you said what we're learning, the free courses that we're learning with you these next couple of
Saturdays, we'll teach every major concept of logical reasoning and reading that you would need to know for the test, concept, question types, etc. So I will go through that. The homework and the explanations will be behind the paywall.
Okay, so we would have to pay to get those additional information.
Exactly. And it's just kind of the reinforcement of what you're learning. There won't be any like hidden new information. At least that's my goal. Part of the problem is what I'm allowed to teach free is pulling from a very limited amount of material. And so trying to touch on every single Lsat concept when they're only letting me teach from 1 test is impossible, because if it's not covered on that test, how can I possibly teach it?
Right. And you said with the classes being online, and this is my last question, I won't take up too much time, with the Lsat flex test, they said it went from 5
it's now 3 sections.
So 3 sections. And so with that, since I've never taken it online, I still have to be prepared for what I would be prepared for 5, but just for 3, or is it somewhere to go focus?
So there's only 3 section types on the test. Even when it was 5 sections, you would just get multiple of the same type. So it actually really doesn't matter in your study plan of whether you're studying for the 3 or the 5. It's more of like when you actually sit down to do a practice test, how many sections are you going to take? But the material is the same exact material. It's just how many of the same types they were going to do.
And should I be practicing when I'm taking my practice exam? Should I be practicing on the Lsat flex test?
Yeah, I mean, so they only have two free, two on the, it's not even free, on Law Hub. Actually, no, they just added the two for free. So there's two free ones on Law Hub. That's the lawhub.lsac.org website. There are two free flex version tests. If you pay for the Prep Plus, which again, you should get, it's my advice to get that to study from. If you do, you'll unlock 70 tests that have 4 sections, but you can take just 3 of them. It lets you take it like not as a full test, but just taking 3 sections so you can practice what it's like with just 3 sections.
Okay, so last question.
Yeah.
With the ones that you that are free, is it wise to continue to take those 2 over and over to try to build the knowledge?
You want to review every test a bunch of times to make sure you understand it, but I wouldn't like just do those 2 because it's taking a regular test that's 4 sections, but only doing 3 of them is the same thing as taking a flex test. Like I really don't see it as any different. Like in terms of like getting a fair gauge of score, it's like maybe it's slightly skewed, but like the actual experience is the same exact thing. There's nothing you're really missing out on by just skipping the second section. Like there's nothing you're going to miss out on from that.
Okay. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. My pleasure. All right. So got a few more questions here. Jen, right? Was that? Yeah, Jen, who got covered up at the last second.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Cool. This is actually a good, well-timed because my question was also about the LSAT Flex. I'm glad to hear, I haven't looked at LawHub in a minute, so I didn't notice those new ones. I'm glad there are some actual practice LSAT Flex ones there. My question, I guess you kind of just touched on, but it's kind of like how well I can expect the scores I've been getting on the full kind of 4 or 5 section test to translate, because I do feel like consistently the logic games is my weakest section. And if it's a bigger percentage of the entire test, then I feel like I might be losing some points there.
Yeah, I mean, look, in theory, it's true. There are certain circumstances. I will say, usually, obviously, every case is different. Like if you're literally your differential between games, like you're 25 out of 25 in LR and you're 25 out of 27 in reading, but you're getting 10 in games. Like, yeah, that differential might be a bigger difference. You know, that hurts you a lot more, but it's still going to be within a couple points. I'll say this. Realize that we only have 1 flex test that has a scoring scale. So for the last 7 months, we've been doing flex tests as instructors, like teaching flex tests as just the original 4 and then correlating it rough. Like when we give our students practice tests, we're just like kind of rough shooting the numbers, like either having them take 4 and then just being ready for less, or taking 3 out of the 4 and then doing some math to correlate it. Like if you use one of those calculators online, that's not a real number. That's just a guesstimate. Now, what I'll say is over the last 7 months, it's been extremely indicative of how people are doing. Like it's hard to put exact data to that in such a short time. But yeah, I mean, we've seen there is actually like data about how many people are scoring at the super high numbers. So it almost seems like maybe they're curbing it in a way that might be giving people an advantage on the flex test, but we really don't know. There's just law of large numbers is going to start helping us get better ideas, but you know, it's kind of a crapshoot, but my guess is it's out of your, my philosophy is it's out of your control. So it just is what it is. And you go by that and don't worry about it because it's been close enough.
Fair. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, what can we do, right? There's no way, like, it's one of those questions that you come across in life that it's like, there's nothing you can do.
Yeah,
you know?
Totally.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for the question. Eunice?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep. How you doing?
I'm good. I have a question. Basically, is it possible to score a diagnostic within the 120s, but your goal is within the 160s to reach the high 160s, even though your diagnostic
So I never want to tell anybody that any number is impossible. I hit 27-point improvement and I literally capped out. So it's not like that's not possible. I've had students get 30 plus points. Personally, I've never had a student get 40 plus, but that doesn't mean it's not theoretically possible. You know, what the question's equivalent to, let's say that I had dreams of being competitive at golf. I just really want to get interested in golf. And I pick up a golf club and I can't even, like, without any practice, like I can't even hit the ball. Now anyone can go like, Eunice, have you ever golfed before?
No.
Like if you went and started hitting golf balls, like, do you think you would do well?
No.
No. And it's like, if you were, but let's say you had for some reason an interest in becoming like better at golf, like, are you going to let your starting point dictate like whether you're going to be Tiger Woods? Like maybe you're like, well, I guess I'm not going to be Tiger Woods, but like, could I become really good at golf? Maybe I have no clue. Like we really don't know until you actually start really studying and learning strategies and working at it. Yes, by starting lower, it means that you have more growth that you're going to need, but that doesn't mean it's impossible. You know, it would be like, and like when I say, are you going to be Tiger Woods? Like maybe, I mean, not Tiger Woods in the sense that he was like one of those child prodigies at golf, but like does it mean you can't become a professional golfer? Maybe, I don't know. Maybe after year, you know, whatever amount it is, months and months and a year of practice of like really drilling it, you can become at that level of like a quote unquote pro golf level. You know, I mean, who knows? Like we really can't say until you start practicing. And so I don't want you to get discouraged by an initial diagnostic. I see it only as a floor, and then use it as a motivation of, yeah, you're going to need to put work in to get that improvement. It just is going to take, coming back to what I said earlier about the students that fall below 150, just keep in mind that this studying of this test is different than other things. So if you're going to approach this with the mindset of pure hard work guarantees results, that's not the right mindset. You need to really, it's a skill that you're going to have to learn and adapt to. You're going to have to change the way you think. You're going to have to read things more patiently and more carefully than you've ever read before in your life. That's what's going to be important, not just memorizing a bunch of information and doing the work. Like, it's not just like, think about, like, I'm using that analogy of golf for a reason. Like, if you just went to a driving range and every day, but didn't like do any sort of like coaching or anything like that, do you think you're going to become a great golfer just by going to the driving range every day?
No.
Or does it take both? It takes like driving range and self-assessment and some guidance and some coaching and all of it coming together to get that type of improvement.
Right. Yeah.
And that's Lsat.
Okay.
So
right.
Yeah, if I'm kind of comparing, it would be like, obviously the two, you and a friend go out to learn golf together as a thing, and your friend is able to like hit the ball, like even though it's not that straight or that long, but at least able to hit the ball, and you're just like swinging and missing on golf. Like that's the 120 versus 140 starting point. Like I guess the person at 140 is off to a bigger start, but like, does that mean the friend that's able to connect at least a little bit right now is going to be better than you in whatever many months from now? Like, no, not necessarily. Maybe if you practice, you could become better than them.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
My pleasure. All right. So next one, Nia.
Hello.
Hi, Nia. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good.
So I guess I just I'm a little different from the other people that have been talking, where I work full time, so 40 plus hours, and I signed up for January because I wanted to go this coming fall, but I just took a time diagnostic and it was like 150 something, and I'm aiming for like T14. So
yeah, I mean, look, it's
like,
I get the practicalities of life of like balancing work and everything, and you know, it comes in contrast with what the ideal LSAT studying is. But I get it. I've worked with countless students that do work full time. I tell people that work full time, expect things to take 2 to even 3 times longer to click. It's just, the problem is time, and good time. It's not just amount of time. Like, are you studying after work or before work?
After work.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, that's really hard because after a day's worth of work, your brain is fried. Like, it's not going to help you as much as if you can find time when your brain is fresh.
Right.
And that's just, and I realize you have a job and commitment and all those things. And so, you know, it just is what it is sometimes. where you're doing your best, but it's just going to take longer. So, this comes back to, especially if you have a good, stable job, I'm usually very against the waiting a year, but especially since it's already going to be second half of the year, you're already, you can push for that January. But again, have you taken an official yet?
No, not yet.
Okay.
This is the first one.
So, I wouldn't take it unless you get a score that's capable of getting you into a T14, if that's truly your dream. And in the sense of balancing that with, like, how important is it to you to go this year? Because when students study with the full-time schedule, I tell them to expect 6 months or longer.
Okay.
So maybe next year. I don't want to dictate your life though.
No. I mean, it was like more for, I just felt like I'm getting old, so I'm like, quickly go. But if the school
I'm also not a believer of T14 and bus mentality. I'm not. I see so many students go to good regional schools with huge scholarships or not, and just really thrive at those schools and get great jobs coming out. I've had students go to schools that, like, you're not going to end up, there's like the schools that you're not going to end up at big law, but like, what your dream is of being a lawyer and you want to stay in a local town. And if that's your goal, then why do you need to go to T14 and spend $250,000 between tuition and everything else? So, that's where every personal situation is a little different. So you have to think about, like, why do I really want T14? How realistic is it that if I study longer, like, I get it, maybe even just getting scholarship to the local regional school, maybe that's the point, whatever, versus just going this year, doing really well in school, and you can always transfer to, like, nothing is such an end all be all that I think a lot of students take it to be. So that's why you just gotta, it's a balancing act of all those factors, and there's no right or wrong. It's just a matter of how you want to weigh those factors.
Right. So, I guess then the year is not as important than the school, because I have like a specific school for like some long-term plans that I would like to accomplish. So in your opinion, should I be trying to wait until like October test to do it?
I would try and like aim for a summer test. They haven't announced the dates yet, but June, July, August. What I actually recommend to people that are going to stretch it out and work full time is that you plan on divide and conquer. I mentioned this to the student that was like studying for Lsat before even starting school, before even starting undergrad, but same kind of mentality. When you have a long time to study, especially people that work full time, divide and conquer. Try and focus just on games for like a month. Forget games, spend a month on LR, or then spend a month on reading. Like, keep rotating, because if you only have, let's say 9 good hours in the week, right? I talked about good hours. It's not just busy work, it's about good hours. If you have 9 good hours in a week, trying to do 3 hours of each is not going to do much improvement. But if you could do 9 good hours of games for a solid month straight, like 9 hours a week, good hours a week for 4 straight weeks, you're going to see improvement. If you do 9 good hours of LR for a month, you're going to see improvement. And that's better than 3 hours of each, and you're still doing the 9 hours over the 3 months. So that's why I would say the divide and conquer would be a little better too.
Okay, thank you.
My pleasure. All right, couple more questions, and then I think we're winding down. Andrea.
Hello.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm okay. So I'm scheduled to take the LSAT in April, but after hearing some of your recommendations and input, I think I'm going to probably push it back to the summer.
If you're not planning on, let me say it this way, if you're not planning on applying this cycle, then definitely push to the summer.
No, I'm not. I like the young lady who just spoke. I work a full-time job. I'm, in my 40s, so I'm not I'm not pressured to get in yet.
Sure. Yeah, your opportunities by taking the summer test and then applying early in the cycle are just going to be so much better than what would happen if you took it April for this year. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So my question is that you mentioned that you actually, I guess, you already completed a logic game session,
Mhm.
and you had it with and you provided actual homework and I guess assignments. Now,
Yeah.
is that available
Yeah,
to us
so
now?
it was on, it's like basically it was on YouTube. I had to take it down because of licensing. And
Oh,
then
okay.
I had it on a like in this manual beta functioning website. And I was basically told by my developers and the LSAC web developers that my new website that's going to actually be like a self-running one that I don't have to like manage
Uh-huh.
was ready to go. And then at the last second, we realized that there was this like basically something came up that in all the
Right.
conversations I had, they're like, what about this? And it's like, what do you mean, what about that? And they're like, yeah, there's this thing. And it's like, wait, what? Like, and they, whatever. And so my website is now, if you go to lsatwizard.com, it just says coming soon.
Oh, okay.
But like we have meetings set up for first thing Monday. Like I'm hopeful to get this thing going by Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So like we're in this weird in between right now.
Okay.
If it was important to you to get started in the next 5 days, I have a way of like literally manually doing it. We'd have to use like Venmo or something to, or PayPal to like set up the payment and everything. Cause I don't have a website right now, but
Okay.
if you wait the 5 days to a week, by that it should be on lsatwizard.com ready for you to sign up and everything like that.
Okay. All right. I think I can wait. Also, so so I guess what I gather is that there's more than one way. There's a multiple of resources and tools that actually might be beneficial to study for the LSAT.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if you can provide it or not, but is there any way, during these sessions, if you can kind of give us like a list, not just like specific to a company that offers it, but just kind of say, these are the things that you should probably be looking into as far as the resources. Because I've been on multiple websites. I've went to YouTube, of
Yeah.
some YouTube videos, and I watch, and some were good, some were, wasn't very
Yeah, and it's always hard,
explainable.
especially for a student like yourself. You wouldn't know what's right or wrong, right?
Right. So, and I went to Khan Academy. I went. So
Yeah.
it's like,
So
it's,
here's my thought:
mhm,
is separating first phase stuff, second phase stuff. First
mhm.
phase stuff is learning about the test, learning strategies, learning curriculum, and and that's what my program is going to provide you with. There are other people that teach it differently. That sometimes the conflict can be beneficial, sometimes the conflict can be detrimental. Hard to put an answer to that. It really depends on each student and being in their head, being able to balance those things. So it can get dangerous, but sometimes is rewarding to balance different companies' actual curriculum. And like this is where like personalized attention, I do a lot of one-on-one tutoring. Like when someone's using another company and comes to me after that, I try to figure out, are they lacking in the first phase or are they just lacking in the second phase, so that I know how much to teach versus not. And that can be some of the toughest things for a student to self-analyze and figure out, do I need a new approach or am I just doing my approach wrong? And as much as every approach is better, there are generally better and worse. Some just click better and worse with other people. So
Right.
that's one element. That's like that first phase. Second phase is the getting better at execution. And with second phase, it's about drilling properly. Am I thoroughly reviewing properly? And this is where, when it comes to resources, the two main resources for your second phase, without naming companies, are answer explanations.
What answer? I'm sorry.
Answer
Somebody speaking.
explanations, like places that
Answer.
actually provide explanations to practice questions. And second would be analytics in terms of how am I performing in the different areas. Now,
Okay.
to the same thing with the first phase, every company does it a little different. Every explanation is going to be different. I read all these forums, everything. There's like some that are better at explaining games, and are terrible at explaining logical reasoning, and vice versa. And some explanations click. I see a lot of people that provide these free explanations that I'm reading, and I'm like, that's not even, forget just a like not quality explanation. That's just the wrong explanation. So
Oh,
I
wow.
would never know that. So it's always so hard to like. That's why I also never recommend a company over another. Like eventually, could I get into the explanations myself? Sure. It's just a huge time commitment that I don't have time right now to do. But those would be the things to look out for, are various answer explanations or analytic programs that can give you feedback on what you're doing right or wrong to try and correct those things.
Okay. I mean, yeah, and that's a very like I guess kind of general, because it's like phase one, phase two is like you said, it's like I guess I gotta figure it out, like what is the best approach for phase one as far as like the resources I should use.
Exactly.
And like because I know that you said
let me
that
say
you
this,
all
don't try to do 2 phase ones at the same time. That definitely no.
okay.
Yeah, don't try to read one of the, popular LSAT books and do Khan Academy and do, my program. Like that,
Gotcha.
not like that, like trying to blend that yourself at the same time is going to be overwhelming.
And I think that's what that's what's happening to me now. I'm like Khan Academy, then I got like these old LSAT
dedicate yourself to one strategy, see how effective it is for you, give it the full time. Like, don't give me 1 week and then, like, it's funny, there was like a Reddit post after my first games lesson. Someone was like, I watched the first hour and didn't find it that helpful. It's like, you watched 1 hour of a 10-hour course. Like, of course it's not going to be that helpful. And he was like, I already knew all that stuff. It's like, yeah, of course, because I have to start at the beginning. And if you did another company, of course I'm going to have to cover some of those basics again, right? So it's like, commit to a method, commit to a strategy. If you realize halfway, 3/4, it's totally not working, of course, you don't have to finish per se, but don't go into it like, I'm going to blend all of these. Like, that's going to be overwhelming for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is my last question. So I don't know if you can even answer this question during the session, but how much does it cost for the homework, the extra assignments that you provide outside of the free
I said it earlier, so I guess I'll say it again.
I was late. Yeah,
no, it's okay. And like I said it earlier too, because like I know this is going to be recorded. It'll end up, somewhere on my website's blog, on YouTube, whatever. And so people might be watching it. Today is December 12th, 2020, and prices guaranteed are going to change over time based on the various factors of licensing costs, website costs, maintenance costs, etc. But as of today, my launch price, like on launch, is going to be for the full course. It's $29 a month for that's logic, games, logical reasoning, reading comp. And then it'll be like $99 for 6 months. I am going, for people that are doing the program next week, I probably have like a coupon code that's going to make it like better. Then besides that, you are going to need, there's like a sign up fee and you have to have the Prep Plus package. I don't know if you already have that.
I don't know. I know that
that's like the LSAC requirements are this Prep Plus, and then there's a sign up fee for every student that signs up. There's a fee. So
okay. And you said you have to get the Law Hub Prep.
And you have to have the Law Hub Prep Plus, yeah. So it'll all be on when lsatwizard.com is live, it's all going to be on there. It'll be self-explanatory. It even will have a way that if you don't have Prep Plus, you can buy it on my site, so you don't have to go to that other site. So it'll be on there, and all the pricing will be on there and everything. But that's going to be just the lowest I could do based on how much it costs to get a website, how much it costs to get the licensing, how much it costs to do to maintain like the technicalities. There's like security protocols that you have to do that are way more advanced than just like I can't just go to one of those build your own website things and do it. Right. Certain security things to meet the requirements. So I know that when I launch, as far as out of all the official licensed courses, besides Khan, which is sponsored to be free, mine's going to be the lowest cost on the market. Let's say that. It will be the lowest cost.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it, because I mean that is reasonable. $29 a month and $99 for 6 months.
And just for what it's worth, I'm not afraid to say too. So there's going to be different things besides like a launch day coupon code for the people that show up to the course or whatever. I'm going to do things like I always have. It's already like built on the website, but obviously it'll be once the website launches. If you have a fee waiver, which LSAC has the fee waivers for those that are in more financial need and demonstrate that to LSAC, I'm able, because LSAC has less requirements, I'm able to offer that at a lower rate as well. So there's going to be things like that to keep the cost down as much as possible.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I appreciate you giving us these 4
pleasure.
classes as well. Thank you.
My pleasure. Have a good one.
All right.
All right. I'm going to take one more. I think it is only the last person. And Sabrina.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good.
That's good. So my question is I've been studying for a couple months, and like I was drilling LR by question type, but I found that that was not helpful when I got to like time sections. So now I'm kind of moving into timed sections, and I've only been doing that for a bit now. But my question is, how do I know like when it's okay to start going into like full practice test from like just doing time
Yeah, it's
sections?
balancing a few things. So first, I definitely have this kind of transition period along the way. We're going to be doing something similar with the course where we start off drilling by question type, then we transition to full sections. But I wouldn't, in that switch, I don't instantly switch to time sections. So I go from like individual question types to a full section, but not timed, to slowly building in time, to then doing full sections like strict time, to then doing the full test. Like it's kind of like phases along the way. The exact timeline on which it is has to balance how much time you have to study, everything like that, and how close you are to the actual test that you're planning on taking. And so I'll definitely get into more detail on this as I go through the full course. But the idea is generally by about, if you're more than 6 weeks away from the test, I actually don't care that much about time. I really don't. I think it's something that you do what I call like the timed up sections, which is seeing how long it takes you to finish a section, so that you have an idea of how your timing is and you don't go obnoxiously over, like don't give yourself 2 hours to do a section, but don't put yourself on that 35-minute clock until you have a good conceptual grasp of the test. And then once you start seeing 35 minutes consistently, that's when I would say, okay, now you're ready to start putting it together in a practice test. And don't be surprised if every time you change that format, there's a little bit of a dip right away as you're changing format before you start getting it back up.
Okay. Yeah, that helps. Thank you.
My pleasure. All right. So I think I addressed everybody's questions. Again, this was meant to be that AMA to make up for this delay in the LSAT Wizard launch of our logical reasoning and reading comprehension course. This is something that if you're still watching, I still see we got a whole bunch, dozens of people still watching. So you can go back and watch it again. It's going to be posted to YouTube. I have my YouTube channel. It's going to be on lsatwizard.com. It'll be on my blog. It'll be on different places. Always feel free to reach out to me directly, email me, contact me, and I'm happy to answer any questions in the future. So thank you all for attending. I look forward to getting started on this course next week with you. So see you all next week, same time.